Okay, so this is part 2 of my Ancestry.com story. So, as I said, I have a series now on the Massiah journey that I am on right now to find my family history, and it has been very eye opening. In the last video, I talked about my last name and some of my relatives that are in the Caribbean. So, in this video, I want to talk about the actual DNA test and what it showed for the regions of people with the last name Massiah. Basically, I knew as a kid that I was named after two things. Massiah is my last name, and so I knew that there were Messiahs in Canada, United States, the Caribbean, France, England, Scotland, and Africa. I think those are the only places that I knew at the time. And I remember once getting a book in the mail called The Great Book of Massiah. Like it's kind of like a family history book of all the people with that last name. And so my parents both lived in England and Scotland at one point in their lives. And they both lived in the Caribbean at one point in their lives as well. And a bunch of my siblings were born in Britain or in the UK. And so I knew the family histories of all of my siblings and my parents and my grandparents. And I knew that both of my parents are mixed race. My father's family is British and Irish and African and Portuguese, I think. They lived in Portugal, but they were African. And my mother's side of the family, they are they're from the Caribbean. They lived in Britain, but they are also from South America, and they're Aboriginal and Black. And so I knew those things from speaking to my parents about their family history. So basically, what I did is I got all of the history that I could on all of my siblings, then both of my parents. I figured out who all of their siblings are, and I figured out who all of their parents were. And as I added all that stuff into Ancestry.com, the algorithm in Ancestry.com basically found information for me. So I also knew there would be clues in my family history by my last name and by my first name. Like I said, I talked a little bit about the last name Massiah and how it was changed from MESS to MASSIAH. And my first name is Monique. And when I was a kid, people sometimes called me Monica, and I'm French. And I knew that the French version of Monica is Monique. And I am named after Saint Monica, right? And Saint Monica lived in Algeria, and there is a connection of my family to Algeria. And it's very telling because my family, like I said, was really religious. And Saint Augustus of Hippo used to live in Algeria. Augustine is considered one of the fathers of modern Christianity. So this is a picture, basically, that's me, that little speck down there in black. The black square is me, and my siblings are next to me. Then the two in the middle are my parents and their siblings and their husbands and wives and blah, blah, blah. And then those are my grandparents in like the second highest row there, and then my great-grandparents there. That's what the tree looked like at the time. That's probably about like a month after. And like I said, Ancestry.com basically started filling in hints for each person. I decided not to put any pictures of any of my relatives on here except for me and my parents, and that's just because I don't think that they would want their picture to be out there for Ancestry.com to see or to search, so I don't put any of my family members' pictures on there. The only pictures that are on my tree are, like I said, mine, my mom and my dad, and then my historical ancestors, so people who lived in the 17, 16, 1500s. I noticed also in Ancestry when I started going to like my grandparents and my great grandparents, this little kind of icon that's in the corner. I think it's called truLines or something like that. And it basically is telling you you have a direct relationship with this person. It tells a story of, some of the facts of their lives, like they came from England or they came from Scotland and then they got married and had kids. And then it goes all the way back down to me. So that's another way on Ancestry.com of figuring out who is directly related to you. So these are like all my grandparents, all my great grandparents, and whatever. So this is one of my ancestors, right? And this was extremely interesting. I think Jane Hutchinson or Jane Williamson Massiah. Anyhow, as you can see, her race is different from mine. But like I said, I come from a mixed race background, so I was like, okay. But they're from Scotland and England, right? And it is very interesting of how many people are in my background who are from Ireland, Scotland, and England. So eventually I'm going to probably go over in this series how my family got from Ireland to Scotland to England and then to North America. It is very, very interesting, I think. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and basically the last thing that I want to talk about on here, is how my last name changed from Messiah. So, like I said, Massiah means savior in lots of old languages. There's like 3 different languages where Massiah means savior. And I think in like Aramaic or something like that. But I noticed while I was looking at here, and I looked up a hint, and you can search for actual entrance documents. So like your immigration documents. So my family immigrated from Ireland to Scotland and from Scotland to England. And I think when they went from Ireland to Scotland, that's when they had like some sort of transportation or passenger list or like census list or something like that, where somebody has to register the family. And they do it by hand. In the next video, I'm going to see if I can find one of them so you can see for yourself. But there are tons of mistakes in those documents. And I think that there's 2 reasons why they changed our name from Massiah to Massiah. One was when my ancestor, I think it's either Jacob or Isaac Massiah, when they came from Ireland to England, I think it would have been strange for people to call somebody by the last name Massiah. I'm sure those people were super religious, and it would have been strange to call somebody with the last name Massiah. So 1, I think it could have been that the person deliberately changed the last name because they're like, this is strange that your name is Savior, right? And 2, like I said, I've looked at hundreds of those documents, and most of them are handwritten, old-fashioned thing done in the 1700s and 1600s. So I think that whoever was the one doing the registration, sometimes they can't spell. Sometimes they forget an H at the end of the name, or they forget to put double S, or they changed it from M-E to M-A. So I think that sometimes people say, oh, my name is Jacob Massiah, and that sounds like an A. So that's why they could have probably written A and not changed it. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you was the map. Like I said, this is my DNA map. Well, part of it. This is where some of my ancestors live. Another side of the map is like the Caribbean, where it shows like South America and like the Caribbean and everything, and Canada, where my relatives are. So I'll probably show that where some of my other relatives are in the world, but basically like it's predictable. England, Scotland, Ireland, France. Yeah, that's true. Algeria, Benin, Central Africa. Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, in another 2, maybe 3 days, I'll post the next part. Thanks, and subscribe, please.